Hi guys, welcome back to my kitchen. It's a little bit late in the afternoon, but I need to get started with dinner and I thought I would take you along with me. I'm sharing a few things with you today that are quick and simple for what we pull from when we are ready for something just really quick for dinner. I'm going to start by making a cornbread. Now, this cornbread will be made with this cornmeal that is medium grind, and while it could be used just like this, I like it to be a little bit finer. So I'm going to ground this in my grinder here along with the wheat berries that I need to make up the flour. And since I'm grinding this and it's already so fine, I'm not going to run it through my Nutrimil Harvest. Could it handle it? Possibly, but I don't want to take the chance. And since I already have this mill, I just reserve things that are questionable for my grinder here. So I'm going to grind the amount of cornmeal and the amount of wheat berries I need to make this cornbread for dinner today. So if you've been on my channel for a while, you know that this is the grinder I used before I got my Nutrimil Harvest to grind all my wheat berries. I absolutely love it. It's pretty loud, but it works just fine. I really upgraded to the Nutrimil Harvest because it can do larger batches each time. And so I'm going to take off the lid here and put all the ingredients I need in here and give it a grind. This recipe calls for 1 cup of cornmeal, I'm going to go for 1.5 cups so we can get that corn flavor. And then I'm going to use 1 cup of soft white wheat. And I'm just going to throw it all in here. And the beauty of this grinder is that it's going to grind it all together perfectly for me. I'll move my other ingredients for now. So there are a few more steps to using this grinder than, say, the Nutrimil Harvest. With this, I can just pour the berries in and get started. But with this one, it's a little bit more work, but that's okay. So I'm just going to plug this in. There's a dial here on the side, and I'm going to turn it to 1 and then let it run. Check the berries to see if it is the consistency that I like, and then do it once more if I need to. I always unplug it before I open it up. I'm going to check to see if this is the grind I would like. And as you can see, it is almost ready. I'm just going to let this go for a little bit longer. I can still see some whole wheat berries in here, so I just want this to go for a little bit longer to make sure that it's perfectly the texture I like. So I'm just going to run this one more time. All right, let's check to see if this is ground up enough. All right, as you can see, this is now a nice powdery texture, which is what I'm looking for. So if you remember, this is a mix of my flour, which I used soft white wheat today, and a mix of the cornmeal that was very coarse at the very beginning, or maybe not very coarse, but it was a medium grind, and I didn't like that. It was still too coarse for our liking, and so this now is a light and fluffy texture, which is exactly what I needed for this cornmeal batter. Right now my oven is preheating at 425 degrees, and I'm going to be baking this in a cast iron, so soon I'm going to prepare that for the oven as well. So as you can see, this grinder works just fine. It works really well. Takes a few more steps than you would have to take if you were using something like the Nutrimil Harvest, which I also love. But if you are having trouble getting your hands on a Nutrimil Harvest right now, as I know that they're difficult to come by, you can absolutely use one of these machines in the meantime. They're more cost effective and they work well for smaller batches. All right, so here's what I'm working with right now. All right, so let's add the rest of the ingredients. In my bowl, I already have 1 cup of soft white wheat, and I have 1.5 cups of cornmeal. To that, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of baking powder, I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, I need 3/4 teaspoon of salt, and now for the wet ingredients. Sugar is considered a wet ingredient, and so I'm going to add sugar. You can substitute the sugar for honey if you prefer, and we like our cornmeal a little bit on the sweeter side, so I'm going to put 3/4 of a cup of sugar. This is not something we eat on a regular basis, so I'm not really concerned with how much sugar is in here. You can adjust this to the liking of your family. I'm going to mix this, and then I'm going to add my 2 eggs and my oil. I'm using avocado oil for this. You can also use butter if you prefer. Okay, so I'm just mixing this all together on my dry ingredients. Once that's combined very well, I'm going to make a well in the center of my dry ingredients. Best practice is to do this in a separate bowl. This is a weeknight. I'm kind of in a rush, so I'm just going to do it all in one bowl today. Save myself the dishes, and about 1/4 of a cup of oil. Again, you can switch your oil for butter. The last ingredient to pull this all together, you're going to put in 1 1/3 cup of buttermilk, or you can use regular whole milk. I'm not measuring here only because freshly milled flour takes a little bit more liquid sometimes. So what I'm doing now is just adding half of what I might need. I'll stir that together, and then I'll add the rest so that I don't put in too much liquid. When working with freshly milled flour, you will have to learn certain techniques, and it just gets easier the more you work with it. We've been using freshly milled flour exclusively for a long time now, and trust me, if we can do it, you can do it too. Again, that's not to demonize anybody who's using all-purpose flour or any other flour options. Go with what works best for you and your family. Alright, I like the consistency that I have here. Best practice is to let this sit for another 10 or 15 minutes so that fresh flour can absorb all of the liquid that you just added to it. So what I'm going to do is put this to the side and get my skillet ready while the flour absorbs all the liquid. Okay, so my batter has been sitting for a while. I'm going to get my cast iron ready. I'm just going to simply pour some avocado oil on the bottom of my pan. Brush that on. You can use butter in this case as well, if you'd prefer. If you remember, my oven is preheating to 425, so I'm just going to get this in my cast iron pan and get it into my oven. This will bake for 20 to 25 minutes, so you have to keep an eye on it. I have a little bit of avocado oil on the top, but that's okay. This is ready to go into the oven. Alright guys, so for dinner today we're having some fried shrimp with some French fries and the cornbread that I already popped into the oven. So I'm just going to lightly season the shrimp. Now this has already been defrosted and washed, so I'm just going to put a light seasoning on here just to give it some flavor. You can pretty much season this however way you would like. I'm using some all-purpose seasoning, a little bit of garlic and herb, and some paprika. You can add something with some heat if you would like, but again, I'm just keeping this very simple today. I'm going to let this sit for a while because my cornbread is in the oven, and while the cornbread is in the oven, I want this to soak in all the seasoning. I'll put a little bit more paprika on that, just to get a little bit more color. Alright, the next thing I'm working on today will be my French fries. I'm going to quickly wash and peel my potatoes. In our family, we prefer the potatoes without the skin, so I'm removing the skin and giving it a quick wash. Okay, I'm going to cut these into French fry shapes and get it into a bowl of water. The water is going to prevent it from browning while I wait to fry them. So putting it in water will remove some of the starch and it will prevent it from browning. You can also add some salt to the water, but I just have it in cold water here. So this will more than likely be for my children. For the adults, I'm going to make some sweet potatoes. Alright, so I have these sweet potatoes here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to remove the skins, and then I'm going to cut them up and get them into a bowl of water. If you've worked with sweet potatoes, you'll know that they are quite a bit harder than your regular white potato, so they're going to take a little bit longer to cook. Alright, so everything I need is pretty much prepped. My cornmeal is in the oven, my potatoes are prepped, and so are my sweet potatoes. I don't want to do anything else right now because shrimp cooks really quickly and these won't take too long to fry up either, so I'm going to start working on dessert. Alright guys, so everything is prepped for dinner. My potatoes are soaking, my shrimp is marinating, and my cornbread is almost out of the oven. So I'm going to get started with dessert, which will be a simple 1-bowl chocolate cake that I'm going to frost with a simple buttercream frosting. Okay, I'm going to be using soft white wheat for this because it calls for baking powder and baking soda, and we know the rule of thumb is if you're going to be using baking powder or baking soda, you want to use a soft wheat variety. So I'm going to grind my wheat into this bowl, and to this bowl I'm going to add all the rest of the ingredients. Really simple. I love that it doesn't take too many steps to pull this all together. So it would have been too loud to speak over the mill, and so I was waiting to share the rest of the ingredients that I was adding to my bowl. In here I have about 1 1/3 cup of soft white wheat. I'm going to be adding, or I already added, 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of salt. My husband and I recently celebrated 18 years of marriage, and so I went out and bought a little bit of cocoa powder. If you've been following me for a while, you know that we've been avoiding chocolate, but we have a little bit of cocoa powder left over, so I thought we could use it for a fun weeknight treat. So I'm adding about 3/4 of a cup of cocoa powder. And the recipe calls for 2 cups of white sugar, but I only use turbinado sugar, so that's what I'm adding here. Just a little bit less than the recipe calls for, because the granules in here are much bigger than you would find in a white sugar. Alright, so I'm going to mix this all together. Hopefully my bowl is big enough. On the stove, I have 1 cup of boiling water going. That's the last ingredient that I'm going to add. Okay, so I'm just going to mix the rest of this together. Note to my future self, you're going to need a bigger bowl. That's much better. Okay, so now I'm going to make a hole, make a well. Add my 2 eggs. Again, best practice. Oops. Best practice is to do this separately. Don't be like me and get some shells in. Add some vanilla. And then you're going to need 1 cup milk, and ½ cup vegetable oil, or in this case I'm using avocado oil. Use the oil that works best for you and your family. If you follow my channel, you know I often stay away from chocolate and I often stay away from using milk. I usually substitute many of my recipes with water, but on special occasions and for something decadent like this, then I don't skip the milk. Alright, so to this now we want to add our 1 cup or so of boiling water. Remember, freshly milled flour takes a little bit more liquid, so I'm going to go with what the recipe says, but adjust it as needed. Pouring in some boiling water. Stirring that together. I'm going to add just a little bit more water. Again, freshly milled flour has a lot to do with the feel of the batter or the feel of the dough, not exact recipes, because your recipe can change based on the temperature, whether it's raining outside, the humidity in your home, lots of different things. If the wheat berry's too wet, if it's milled too fine or not fine enough. So there are lots of things that affect your end product, but the more you work with it, the more confident you will get, and you'll start trusting yourself to know when something looks right and when it feels right. And I've made this recipe so many times, so I know exactly what I'm looking for. And this is it. Okay, so I'm going to prepare my pan for the cake. Now, if I were doing this for a special occasion, if I was doing this for a birthday, this is enough batter to pour into 3 small round cake pans and create a 3-layer cake. I'm not doing that today. I'm just doing something simple. So I'm just going to pour all of this into my ceramic pan and then get that into the oven. I'm just going to put 1 layer of frosting on here, and so I'm just going to keep it really simple tonight as a little delicious treat after a simple dinner. So here, if I were going to turn this into layered cakes again, I would put parchment paper down, but I don't have to do that. I'm just going to leave everything inside of here. So I'm just going to generously butter my pan and then pour in the batter. The batter seems very runny, and that's exactly what you want. You're going to get a nice fluffy cake at the end. This is one of those times when you really have to just trust the process. All right, so now this is ready for the oven. I'm going to put this in the oven at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes. Alright guys, the last thing I have to do right now is to put together the frosting for the cake while the cake is in the oven. And this is a very simple American buttercream frosting. It takes 1 cup of butter, about about 2 or 3 teaspoons of vanilla. It's also going to take a lot of powdered sugar, at least 4 cups. And if the consistency is not what you like, you can add in 1 or 2 tablespoons of milk to get it exactly the way you want to. Again, I'm not going to color this. I'm keeping it very simple for this weeknight treat. So I'm just going to start by creaming my butter. And if you aren't aware, 2 sticks of butter counts as 1 cup. So I'm just going to cut this up to make it easier on my machine to start creaming it together. If I were making this for a birthday or for our anniversary, for example, again, I would be making tiered layers, and I would make a double batch of this. But I'm only making this for the 1 layer of cake, and so I don't need to double this recipe. I'm going to start by combining the butter and the vanilla extract. When this is nice and combined, then I'll start adding the sugar. I'm adding the sugar 2 cups at a time. And just like that, we have some absolutely delicious buttercream frosting. I'll give you a peek at what's going on in my bowl. Oh, this is lovely. All right, this frosting looks amazing, and I love how easily and quickly it comes together. Let me unplug this, remove this, then I'm gonna scrape this. So now it's ready. It's just waiting for the cake, and once the cake is finished, I'm going to put it in my refrigerator to cool down for a bit. And since I'm not doing any kind of fancy decorations, as soon as it's cooled, then I'll be able to frost it. That's delicious, you guys. I could eat this whole bowl. Absolutely delicious. Alright guys, I want to share the cornbread. It is made with soft white wheat, and I also paired it with some cornmeal. It looks amazing, smells fantastic, and I can't wait to cut into it. Yum. Alright guys, so I'm going to be actually putting dinner together now. My potatoes have been soaking this whole time. As you can see, they didn't turn brown because they were sitting in the water. So very important, I have to make sure that I dry these very well before I put it in the really hot oil, because otherwise it will splatter. Now, I don't know about you, but I definitely reuse oil, and as long as it's clean, I'll use it as many times as possible. So I'm going to get the oil started on the stove, and then in the meantime I'm going to dry these potatoes. It's very simple. I'm just going to take a paper towel and soak up as much of the water as possible to make sure that they're very dry. Now, I don't fry often, but when I do, it's always a family favorite. Alright, these are nice and dry. So once my oil comes up to temperature, I will start putting them in the pot in batches. Once I'm almost done with this batch, then I'll start drying these off and getting them ready. I will bring you back when everything is all done. So all I have left to do really is fry up the potatoes, and then I'll show you how I'm going to prep the shrimp for the oven. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to give my sweet potato fries a different treatment. So right now, my white potato french fries are cooking away on the stove, and I'm going to pop these in the oven so that everything comes out about the same time. I'm drizzling some avocado oil on the bottom of my parchment paper. I'm going to dry these. On paper towels, just like I did the others. And then I'm going to put them on here. This way I can get the whole batch done at once. You're going to want to put this in a really hot oven. I'm going to drizzle some oil over the top of this. Again, use the oil you want to use. I'm using avocado oil here. I'm also going to season my fries. A little bit of seasoning never really hurts. I'm going to add some salt and some parsley. If you have other herbs that you enjoy using, go ahead and use that. And then I'm just going to work that in. And I'm going to spread these out so that they're not touching as best as I can. Again, you want to pop this into a really hot oven, about 425, and watch it closely so it doesn't burn. Alright, the last piece of this is for me to prepare the shrimp for the oven. So usually you'll have a bowl for your egg and then a bowl for your crust. But I'm just going to keep it simple today. I have some homemade breadcrumbs here that I made with my own bread. And I've shared how to make that in a previous video. But if you would like a refresher, feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section. I've already seasoned my shrimp and it's been sitting in the seasoning. So what I'm going to do is just add my eggs directly to this bowl. I'm using 2 eggs. And I'm just cutting out one of the steps. Again, it's a weeknight. I'm trying to keep things really simple. I'm adding some of the breadcrumbs to my bowl. And I can always add more if I need. I'm also going to season my breadcrumbs. So I'm going to add some parsley here to taste. And I'm also going to add a bit of all-purpose seasoning. My all-purpose seasoning already has salt in it, so I'm not going to add any more salt. I'm going to give that a stir. Alright, before I finish up with the shrimp, I just wanted to show you my first batch of French fries. They're nice and crispy and exactly what you want to see when you're making homemade French fries. Okay, so in my bowl I have some breadcrumbs, I have a little bit of parsley and some all-purpose seasoning. I'm going to mix that all together. And in here I have my shrimp and 2 eggs. So I'm just going to essentially scramble those eggs and get each shrimp into that egg mixture. I find this just a simpler way to get it all done. So now this is nice and coated, and I'm going to take it from here, put it into my bowl, and then get it onto my prepared sheet. And to here I'm going to add a bit of avocado oil to the sheet pan. And then you just do this until you finish all the shrimp. It's just one less step. Which, don't we all need one less step? Alright, I'm gonna get in there with my hands. It's a little messy, but hey, it's fun. And my family really enjoys it. Again, we don't eat like this every week or every night of the week. And so I'm happy to do it. There are 5 of us in our family, and so I like to keep it in rows of 5. So it's easier to share, because if you're in our family, you know, we have to have an equal proportion of shrimp. Everybody counts who's got what in their plate. Alright, I'm gonna need some more breadcrumbs here. Ideally, you want to give these as much space as possible, but my oven is pretty full right now, so I'm trying to squeeze as much as I can onto my baking dish. But likely I'm going to need a second tray. Since I had to make 2 trays, I might as well space them out. Alright, so this is ready. And so is this. When the cake comes out of the oven, I will do a rotation and I'll put these in, and also take a look at the sweet potatoes. So here's my batch of regular French fries. They are crispy and absolutely delicious. First thing you want to do once they get out of the oil is hit them with some salt. Shake that up. And now they are ready to serve. Alright, I'm checking on the cake. Feels firm to the touch, and I stuck my knife in. It comes out clean, so the cake is definitely finished. Alright, so I pulled the cake out. Now I'm going to take the sweet potato fries and pull them to the top. And then I'm going to put a layer of shrimp in. Alright, so let's put the shrimp in and let that do its thing. Alright guys, the cake is finished, and it probably needs a little bit more time before I frost it, but I'm going to go frost it anyway and then put it in the fridge to fully set. Again, this is a weeknight treat. This is not really a special occasion, so I'm not going to worry too much about decorations or anything of the sort, and I'm only going to put 1 layer of frosting on. So this is just keeping it super simple. I didn't take out any of my cake decorating tools or anything. Just using what I have. Alright guys, so this is finished. I am going to now pop this into the freezer for it to fully set, and by the time we're finished with dinner, it should be ready to go. Alright guys, this is our spread for the night. We started with the cornbread. It smells absolutely delicious. I can't wait to cut into it, and I'm going to do that in just a second. This is our oven fried shrimp. As you can see, I breaded it and then I placed it in the oven. I did not fry this in oil. I just gently put a little bit of oil on my pan and I finished it in the oven. These are the oven roasted sweet potato fries, and then these are the regular French fries that I made on the stove in oil as usual. I also made a quick weeknight chocolate cake, and I'll show you what that looks like when it's set. But it's time to eat, so let's get to it. I just want to cut into the cornbread to give you a peek. And here it is. Here's what I'm starting with tonight. I have a little bit of shrimp, I have some cornbread, and I'm choosing to have the sweet potato french fries. So thanks guys for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're not subscribed, I ask for you to please subscribe. Leave your comments down in the comment section. If you have questions about freshly milled flour or anything of the sort, feel free to ask them down in the comment section down below. Thanks again for being here today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.